Hey, Vlad here from devinside.com. Welcome to another video. Today we're playing around with bat, a replacement for cat, and delta, a diff tool that integrates directly into the Git CLI. I use these tools all the time. Let's get right to it. If you're new here, you should probably know that this is mostly a Scala channel. However, often enough, I make videos about all kinds of software-related topics like tools. Let's begin. Cat is a Linux tool that has been around since forever, and it is most commonly used to simply read a file and print it back out on the standard output. It is actually more capable than this, but this is what it's mostly used for. Bat is a pawn and replacement for cat, which comes with mainly three noticeable differences. Without additional flags, it runs through a pager, last by default. It displays a frame around the file with the file name, line numbers, and the Git gutter. And most importantly, it has syntax highlighting, and it supports themes. It has a very short man page, and in fact, you can configure bat to be used as a pager for man. Technically, behind the scenes, it will use less for the real paging, but in any case, this is how you get syntax highlighting in your man pages. It comes with a couple of built-in themes. However, the coolest thing is that it actually understands Sublime text style themes, as we will see a bit later in the video. What's important to understand about theming and colors in general is that some themes, they just happen to not specify a couple of colors. And so don't be surprised if you choose a different theme and then your man page all of a sudden is less syntax highlighted. We won't play around with bat directly since it's pretty straightforward. You install it with a package manager of your choice and you simply replace every cat command with bat. It actually understands when things are piped into it, and then it switches off the pager mode and it behaves exactly like cat would. For more advanced usages, simply skim through the man page. It's very short, and also check out the README. I'll also show you what I've done, of course. It integrates with a lot of tools like Git, and for example, I use it as a previewer tool for FZF. I already have a video about FZF, and I have an entire playlist about Git, so you might want to check it out. Now, pretty much the only thing that we will do with bat today is we will see how to download a Sublime text theme and configure bat to use it, since Delta is built kind of like on top of bat, and it can actually use the themes from bat. In fact, theming is very important for Delta. Most of the options in Delta are dedicated to it. As a reminder, this is not an in-depth step-by-step guide. I simply show you how to install these tools. I'll show you how they look like by default. I'll show you how to configure them here and there. I'll show you my configuration. And I'll also point out a couple of tips here and there, also how to synchronize their dot files. In fact, I have a dedicated video about synchronizing dot files. You might want to check it out. Cool, let's finally get our hands dirty. As in most of my videos, I'm running Windows and I'm using WSL2, which currently runs Ubuntu 20.04 inside of it. I also use Windows shortcuts, so at any point in time, I can go to Windows like this and then go back to Ubuntu like this. Now, what you see over here is actually my space distribution. This is the one that I commonly use to prepare my videos. This is not the one that I used during recording of my videos. However, I'm going to use this one to show you my configuration for bat and delta, and then at some point we're going to switch to this distribution over here, and this is the one that I usually use to record my videos. For now, it already has bat installed, but it doesn't have delta installed. Also, it doesn't have the latest version of my dot file, so both bat and delta will have the default look. Cool, so let's start by having a look at my dot profile. So I'm going to use bat to open my profile like this, and as you can see, there's a frame around, there's a file name, there are line numbers, there's syntax highlighting. I'm using the space gray base 16 ocean dark theme from Sublime Text, and I'm going to show it to you later. As you can see, by default it runs through a pager, less by default. Let's also introduce a couple of changes. So I'm going to go to dot profile, I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. I'm just going to do blah blah blah. I'm going to save the file. I'm going to bat into it again like this. And as you can see, there's a teeny tiny indicator of Git over there. All right, so I'm going to go into my .files directory, and I have an alias grhh, which comes directly from zsh, well, technically from all my zsh, and I have two videos about zsh as well. Okay, so I'm simply going to remove this again and go back to my home folder like this. We can bat into it again, and we'll see that the change is gone. Now, if we go to the bottom of the page, you're going to see that at line 65 over here, I'm exporting the man page variable. No need to pause the video. This is copy-pasted straight from the README of bat. Okay, so this basically configures bat to be used as a pager for man. So if you were to run man for something like, oh, gee, I don't know, maybe bat itself, we're going to see a couple of, colors here, right? It's a little bit of syntax highlighting. Now, as you can see, there aren't actually that many colors, and this is because the theme that I'm using doesn't actually specify a couple of them. So at this point, we're going to go to my Dev Inside You distribution, the one that I usually use to record my videos. We're going to do the same thing, and you're going to see the default theme specifies way more colors. Let me switch back real quick, and forward, and back, and forward. way more colors. Let's close it. Let's go over here. Now you can go through it real quick. It's very, very short. You can show all characters like non-printable ones, plain stuff, without the frame, without the decorations. You can specify the language and stuff. You can go through it at your own pace. What I want to point out is at the very bottom, there is some stuff about config, okay, over here. There's bad config file and bad generate config file. So this one will simply show the location, okay? So if we do bad config file, then we're going to see that it's over there. And if we actually open it with bat, right, bat config file like this, then you're going to see that all I have in there is just my theme. It's a theme Space Gray, and it's called Base 16 Ocean Dark. It has like a couple of variations for the color schemes because Sublime differentiates between themes and color schemes. Okay, so there's a way to list the themes, and if you notice, it actually contains my theme. If we're gonna scroll up a little bit, okay, so there it is, Base 16 Ocean Dark. This is the one that I'm using. The way it works is that you download it into a very dedicated directory that I will show you in a second, and then BAT has some sort of cache, right? So you just simply do cache build. I did not type it correctly. Build, okay, like this, and it simply caches it, and now it knows about your theme. So the theme directory is actually over here, right? So it's in bat config directory themes like this, and I didn't have to type cd because I'm using ZSH, okay? So I'm not sure if you can see this, but over here I have Space Gray, which is the only theme that I have, and if I actually go there, I'm not sure if you can see this, but as you can see, like the hash over here changed, and that's because I'm using submodules for Git, right? Because Space Gray itself is actually a repository. In fact, I have an alias called gr for Git remote, and if you see the verbose, you're going to see that this is actually where it's from, and I can use the GitHub CLI, and I have a video about this as well. You might want to check it out. I simply typed in repo view web, and I was hoping that it would do it like this. Okay, so this is where it is, right? This is the Space Gray theme for Sublime Text, and this is how it usually looks like. Okay, it has a dark version, has a light version, it has the 80s version, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me close this one. All right, so we're pretty much done talking about BAT. The only thing that I will show you is that it integrates really well with FZF, and I already have a video about it. You might want to check it out. FZF is a file finder, and I can use BAT to preview the files. So if we BAT into my .profile, if we go down again, you're going to see that over, where is it? Well, we can just search it, right? Because we can do slash, BAT, and there we go. Okay, so it's over here. It's one of the FZF options, right? So when I'm going to do preview, I'm going to do BAT, always with the colors, and I'm only going to show the first 50 files like this. Okay, so for example, if I were to go into my config directory, then inside of it, I have a directory called stove, and over here, I'm going to try to open a file with vim. So I'm going to do vim space. Now I'm going to press Control T, which is an FZF key binding, and it's going to start searching for files in this directory. Okay, like this. So for example, let's say I'm searching for, bash aliases, and there we go. This is a preview that is rendered with BAT. As you can see, this is the frame with the file name, with the line numbers, and so on. So if I were to press enter like this, FZF will paste it over here, and now I can press enter again to actually open it with Vim. I'm actually going to close it again because I don't want to make any changes. All right, now let's finally talk about Delta. Delta is simply a tiny binary, and you can use it directly, to diff some files, but most likely you won't. Most likely you will use it as a Git pager, and therefore it will be integrated into the git diff command or the git show command or the git log command if you use it with the -p option, which stands for patch. Let me first show you the alias that I have called G. Again, it comes from ZSH, technically with all my ZSH, which because it has a plugin for Git. So it's very typical that you're going to run something like this: git config global diff, and then, well, not diff, and for example, for show, you're going to say, I want to use Delta. Okay, now as you can see, I'm currently in my, actually, I'm surprised that it actually changed something. Oh yeah, it actually changed something because I typed in something wrong. All right, so what I wanted to show you is that if you do global pager.show delta. This is what I wanted to show you, right? Because I already have it specified, so nothing has changed, obviously, right? So let me actually go back up, and if I show you an alias git show, right, GSH, so if I do git show, then this is already delta. In fact, let me clear the screen like this so that you see only this, okay? So as you can see, like this is a standard stuff from Git, but over here, you see my configuration of delta, right? And you see the file name, which contains the changes. It is underlined. Then this thing over here shows the current hunk or patch, however you want to call it. It tries to figure out the section that you changed. Like for example, over here, this is another section. So typically, like in programming, you would have like some sort of class, and if you have a class with like 100 lines, and then somewhere around line 64, you would change something. It would figure out that you actually made the change in the class. This is the git feature, and delta simply shows it, right? So it would show you, hey, you know, this tiny change is actually in some class. But over here, since this is just bash aliases, it doesn't actually contain proper sections or paragraphs. So what is being shown over here is not displayed correctly. However, it does use syntax highlighting. I configured my theme very, very minimalistically. Basically, everything is dark, is barely visible, only the changes are visible. As you can see, this is my last change. I simply removed 2 lines, this one and this one. Those changes were done to the same file, but there are 2 of them, one here and one here. Let me actually show you a different one. And this one, as you can see, I've been practicing for this video. I just wanted to show you a bigger change. Okay, for example, this one. Now, for this particular one, a lot of things have changed, right? So I removed a couple of lines and I added a couple of new ones, but actually these were the changes. So for these particular cases, I would like to run a one-off command in which I would specify the git configuration just for this one command. Okay, so I can do G, right, and then C for specifying the command. Okay, and now I can do delta side by side. Well, as you can see, I've already been typing it out. Okay, so you can do delta side by side. True side by side is one of the options of delta. Okay, and now I can actually run the command that I want to run, which is show head 5. Okay, and now it's going to run them side by side, which for this particular case is actually more useful. In fact, by the end of the video, we're going to create an alias for this to be quicker so that we don't have to type out so many things. Obviously, if you prefer the side by side view, then you can configure it globally, right? Global, right? It's exactly the same thing. Global, and then you do delta dot side by side, and you just do true. And now if you do, you know, git show head 5, then it's going to look like this. Okay, and now that we have a change, I can also do git diff, right? Because I configured my git to use delta as a pager for git for diffs as well. And so there you go, side by side, change from false to true. In fact, I actually want to revert it real quick. Now, delta doesn't have a main page. However, you can run delta help like this, and it's going to print out a bunch of stuff. Okay, so you can go through it at your own pace, but I'm going to go up all the way over here. There we go. So we're gonna go through it just real quick. Okay. So as you can see, this is a Delta version 083. It's a viewer for git and diff output. So you can use it directly, right? So you can just do Delta and then flags, options, and args. These are the flags. Below are going to be the options and then the args. However, most of the time you're not going to use it like this. You're going to use it as an integration for Git. Okay. But there you go. Light, dark, all of the kinds of things. So you got flags, you got options. By the way, notice that in the options, some of them are deprecated. We're going to see them like somewhere below. There we go. Okay. So for example, if you look over here, if you're going to try to use this, it's not going to work. So read this. It's deprecated. You should use this one instead, and you use this syntax. You say normal and then my background color. So basically, it's always like foreground color, space, and then background color. And then either between them or at the end, you can also specify a couple of attributes like bold or underline. We're going to play with it in just a couple of seconds. Okay. And if you use it as a pager for Git, you use exactly the same options, just without these hyphens. Okay. So if you go back down, right, so now it's going to say how to use it as a git config, right? So it basically says exactly what I just said, right? So you can, for example, configure line numbers, you know, you can set them to true. You can configure the 0 style, right? So these are the lines that haven't changed. You can dim them, you know, the foreground is going to be dimmed, and it's going to use syntax. There will be no background and so on. You can also use features as basically a mechanism to group configurations, right? So you can configure like this and you configure like this, and then you can switch between them really fast. I actually haven't ended up using any of that. Okay, so then you got styles. Like this is the explanation of styles. This is exactly what I just said. For example, the foreground is going to be red, it's going to be bold, it's going to be underlined, and the background is going to be this, which is also red actually. Well, almost red. So this is red, this is green, and this is blue. Let's scroll all the way down. A bit more explanations, a bit of explanations about the colors. As always, we're in the terminal, so you need to make sure that you understand true colors, especially if you use tmux, but that's a conversation for another time. At the very bottom, you also have a bit of explanation how to configure the line numbers. You can change completely how they look like. As you remember, mine, they had a little bit less padding, and it had, you know, the pipes over here instead of these 3 dots, because you can completely configure it with this syntax, and we're going to go through it a bit later as well. Now, Delta uses BAT's themes for syntax highlighting, and it actually has a couple of themes of its own. However, I didn't use them. I wanted to configure everything exactly like I want. I'm a little bit OCD about these things. You can list the themes like this by saying delta show syntax themes, and you have the dark themes, and big surprise, these are actually the bat themes, which is why you're also going to see the ocean dark. Okay, this is how it's going to look like by default. Let's actually find, well, actually we can search for ocean. There we go. So this is how it's going to look like was my theme, was the whole diff. See, as by default, for example, it underlines stuff, like everything is like blue, and it has like the background was red and green and so on. You can also view the light versions. They're not gonna look as nice because my background is actually dark, but as you can see, it looks actually kind of similar to what GitHub does. All right, so let's play a little bit with the configuration. So we're gonna play with this example of the time, right? Then you're gonna be familiar with it, okay? So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna do gconfig global, and then we're gonna do delta minus, and this is going to be the one for emphasizing the change, right? So you have the line change, and then within the line, the actual change, okay? So we're gonna do red, bold, omit. Okay, so basically red foreground, and it's going to be bold, and for background we're actually going to omit it. Right, we actually don't need to specify it. We can just do red, bold like this. Okay, and if you specify multiple things with a space, you need the single quotes. If you're specifying only one thing, you actually don't need it. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and then we're also gonna do plus, right, plus, and it's going to be green like this. Okay, so let's run this example again, and as you can see, these guys are a little bit bold now. Okay, which means that if I'm looking over here, it will be kind of hard to see that this line was not just removed, right? So basically, because this thing is bold, I know that somewhere below I'm actually going to see the change, right? So it basically shows me that this part actually changed instead of the line actually being removed. So if we actually go down over here, for example, we see these three lines that were just added, right? They were not changed, and this line, it was just removed, it was not changed. Let's play around a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is we're going to specify the regular plus style, right? Not the emphasis style. So we're going to do green, we're going to do UL, and we're going to do auto, which means, take the default background color. And we're going to do the same thing for the minus. Minus is going to be, the foreground is going to be red, right? So it's already red, underline, and auto. Okay, so git show and 5, there we go. Okay, so this is pretty much how it would look like by default. Well, I actually also specified underline, right? So the ANSI codes for terminals, they're not like bulletproof. You cannot always like combine them. For example, these guys are not underlined, but these ones are. Now, I don't like this default red and default green. So what we can do is we can actually go over here and we can do, let's do syntax for foreground, right? This would be the syntax highlighting that comes from bat. And for the background, let's use my red. It's the one that I configured for my terminal, okay? Like this. And the plus is going to be similar, right? So it's going to be plus, and over here it's going to be syntax green. Okay, so let's do git show. There we go. Okay, so we kind of don't see the syntax highlighting over here because I don't know, somehow it doesn't really work with this stuff, but usually you will see syntax highlighting, as I will show you in just a second. Okay, so for example, if we were to go over here and we would say 0 style, right, and we would say syntax, and we would say don't use any background. Okay, so if we do it like this, then we're going to see that over here for the lines that did not change, we use the proper syntax highlighting that comes from bat without the background. You can also do just syntax. It's going to be exactly the same thing, right, like this. And also for single ones, you don't even need the quotes, right? So you can just do this, okay? So it's gonna work exactly like this. My advice is not to overdo it, because if it's very, very colorful, you're gonna spend a lot of time, visually distinguishing the changes. For example, if we actually revert everything that we did, and I'm only gonna do like this one thing, right? Just this one thing, right? So the lines that did not change, they will use syntax highlighting, okay? See, it looks pretty much exactly like it was before, but now there are so many colors all of a sudden, right? Colors that come from the color theme, colors, that come from the actual changes. I find it to be too much. You have to visually parse way too many colors. In fact, I actually liked what we did was the bold one. So maybe actually let's go and use it, right? So which one was it? It was the global delta minus EMPH. Yeah, so I like this one, and for the +1 plus, I liked the green ones, right? So it's going to be this one, and actually I think I'm going to stay with this one. Okay, so I have an alias called housekeeping, which will simply dump everything into a commit called housekeeping, and it will push it, and it will actually also close the terminal. So I'm going to do housekeeping, and I'm going to open another tab over here because the previous is going to be closed. Okay, so I actually just pushed these changes to my dot files. So let's actually go to my other VM over here, and I'm going to do config, and I'm going to do alias gfa, right? So it's going to fetch all the changes. So now it's going to notice that there's another change. So it fetches a little bit. Okay, let me also do Control L to clear everything. Okay, so if I run the git diff, and I'm going to compare the head with whatever the upstream is, right? So this is the a git thing to say add upstream, which is going to go to like origin master, right? So it's going to compare head with the origin master. Then you're going to see all the changes that I have done with bat and delta, but I didn't pull them down because I wanted to show you this stuff. Okay, so this is what I did, right? So I added the space gray theme. It has to be in in .config/bat/themes. In my case, it's going to be symlink. So in my case, it's actually in my .file/stow/bat. Again, I have a video about synchronizing dot files, so you might want to check it out. I removed the line over here, removed the line over here. It's actually not related to this. I specified that my theme needs to be base 16 ocean dark, as I have shown it to you. What we're gonna have is so this is a git submodules thing. This is the commit for the submodule repo. As you can see, I configured it as a pager for everything, for diff, log, ref log, and also for show. And this is my config, right? You don't need to pause the video. You can just go and get my dot files. They're public. There's gonna be a link down in the description box. But essentially, I made everything pretty much black. I changed the line numbers like this to make them right aligned and padded to only 3 spaces. By default, it's actually 4. It also has a feature for navigating stuff, right? So you can jump from hunk to hunk, but I actually didn't enable it, so so it's false for me. And a couple of other things. It's pretty straightforward. I also use the syntax theme. It's the one that comes from bat and so on. Okay, that's some unrelated change. That's also some unrelated change. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's install what's left real quick. So as of right now, I actually have bat and I don't have delta. If you have been watching my videos for a very long time, you might know that I gave up on package managers for a very long time because I've been an Ubuntu LTS user, and Ubuntu has a lot of outdated packages. These days, I'm actually slowly transitioning to Nix, but until I fully transition, I'm going to keep using my so-called install repos. So if you go over here, I'm going to open my browser over here. So if you go to install.devinsideyou.com like this, you're going to go, it's going to be redirected to GitHub, and you're going to search for install repositories. As you can see, there's bat and delta. You can also do install devinsideyou.com/bat, and I'm going to open another one, install/delta, and it's going to do the search. Okay, right? So it's going to insert the search. So as you can see, it already filtered them out like this and like this. And all of my install scripts, they're done in such a way that you simply copy paste these 2 lines by pressing on this button. It will download the install script, and it will run it. Okay, I believe in fact for both bat and for delta, it actually uses the Debian packages, right? So it downloads the Debian packages. Let me actually increase the font a little bit. It downloads the Debian package straight from the GitHub releases page, simply installs it, and then removes the Debian package. Okay, same thing over here. So in fact, I'm actually going to go and grab my script over here like this, copy, go over here, simply paste it like this, and there we go. And now I have delta. Ta-da, which delta. Now, I don't want to download the latest version of my dot files yet, so I'm simply gonna, because I want to demonstrate how delta actually looks by default. So if we actually go and configure the global pager.diff to do delta, now we can do the same thing as we did before, and now it's going to run through delta. So this is exactly how it looks like by default, with the default theme that comes from bat. And as you can see, I don't find it to be super pretty. Okay, but as you can see, a bunch of changes, like these are the files, these are the hunks, and so on. So this is exactly the same changes I've shown you before, but now it runs with the default stuff. And I showed you the default version of bat, right? So this is how it looks like. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull the latest version of my dot files. Okay, so I'm simply going to do grhh. I'm going to git pull. As you can see, a bunch of stuff changed. So I'm also going to do git submodule update init, because I wanted to download the submodule for my theme. Okay, I'm also going to go into stove, and I'm going to do stove th bat. Stove th is actually an alias. stove th, right? So if you have seen my video about synchronizing dot files, oh, it's actually not an alias. It's actually, I believe it's in a zshrc stove. Yeah, there we go. So it basically does stove -v for verbose and add, and the target is going to be home, right? So it stands for stove target home. Okay, so I just symlinked my theme. So what I need to do now is I need to update the cache, right? Cache build. There we go, and that's it. And so now if I run this, it should run with my dot files. If I go over here, right, with my dot files. Okay, but now there are no changes. Okay, so if we do something like git show had 5, for example, this is probably not 5. It probably needs to be 6, right? 6, yeah, there we go. So as you can see, I synchronized everything, and now it looks exactly the same as before. In fact, what we should do is what I kind of promised you. If we actually go to my bash aliases, okay, and so over here everything is public, so you can go and check it out. So I'm gonna put it over here, so I'm gonna call it a gs. Okay, so it's gonna be git -c, and over here we're gonna do, well, actually we don't need this. We're gonna do delta side by side equals true. So let's save this. Let's create another one like this. We can close this one. So now my bash aliases were reloaded, and now I can do something like git show had 6. It's gonna look like this. But now if I do gs and then I'm gonna show had 6, then it's gonna be side by side. Okay, it doesn't work because I made a typo. Delta side by. Okay, there needs to be a dot. Okay, so let's go in there again. There needs to be a dot over here, like this. Okay, so new one, whoops, new one like this. Okay, so again, git show like this, right? And gs show ahead like this. It's going to be side by side. Okay, so now it's kind of like built in. Let's actually go and do this like that. Let's also go into my home directory. There we go. Synchronizing dot files is really awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you today. Enjoy both bat and delta. Really, I use them all the time. Okay, I see you in the next one. And for now, as always, this has been Vlad from devinside.com. Don't forget to like this video if you did, subscribe if you want to improve the developer inside you. And if you learned something today, consider supporting me on GitHub sponsors or Patreon, whatever you prefer. And just watch my videos weeks and sometimes even months before everyone else. And most importantly, take care.